All right. So let's do this Savage Worlds 101. Savage Worlds 101s. 101s. All right. So as we touched in the character creation for Savage Worlds, everybody that makes a character, you are called a wild card. All right? You're a wild card. Oh, right there, wild card. You know what? Remember what wild card means, everybody? You guys remember what wild card means? Let me give you a hint. That's right. You get a six-sided. You get a D6 wild die. You get that as a player. Monsters don't get that. NPCs in your party that your DM plays, they don't get it. However, take into consideration, especially if you're a game master for Savage Worlds, you can have NPCs that are wild cards. You can have bosses and enemies, enemy bosses or enemy NPCs that are wild cards. And if you do, then they get to add the D6 onto their rolls. So that is called the wild card. All right? Piece of cake. Piece of cake. All right, so we're going to work on terminology. First off, we're going to bust out this terminology. All right, the first bit of terminology we're going to learn is called ACE, as in Ace Ventura. All right, this means that basically all the tests in this game, all the trait tests and attack test, they're called open-ended. And open-ended means that you can continue to roll maximum dice. So if I have a D8 in shooting and I roll, we'll say that I rolled a D8. All right, that means that it rolls the highest die. So that means I get to roll it again and add it. So we'll say that I roll it again. So I rolled a 6 on top of the 8. That means that my roll was 14. And then, seeing that every target number in the game is a 4, you destroyed that roll. So you easily made that trait test. And there are other rewards that you can get for rolling. Now, don't forget, a raise is the max number on the dice rolled, on that die rolled. Then, roll that die again. And keep adding till you don't roll a max number anymore. Okay, and you just keep rolling. So if you rolled both of these and this is a 2 and a 4, nothing would happen. That's your roll. You would have been successful with a 4 because your wild die would have saved you your butt on that roll. So say that you roll this and your wild die was a 6. Then you'd roll the wild die again. So it's 6 plus 3, so you would have a 9. Easy, you were successful. Or let's say you rolled another 6. Okay, great, you rolled another 6. Roll it again. So you would have a 6 plus 6 plus 2. So your roll would be a 14. That's called an ace. Every time you max roll something with the maximum number, that's called an ace. And you keep rolling until you don't roll max. Open-ended, guys. If you're on the Roll20 virtual top, it's for Roll20, it's /roll space D8 exclamation point. It's called an exploding die in Roll20. All right? Exclamation point afterwards. So that's called an ace. All right? That is an ace. You just keep rolling until you're done rolling. All right. Next thing we need to worry about is a raise. All right? I mentioned raise one other time, but I really didn't discuss it. So, remember we target, well, first off, how about let's kind of back up a little bit. Let's talk target number. All right? Target number, or your TN, okay? All target numbers in the game are 4. Everything is a 4. Every single trait roll, every single skill roll that is not an attack roll. Not an attack. And this is going to be not attacked. All right. Attack rolls, totally different. Okay? So target numbers are 4. Every single target number in the game is 4. I know I keep repeating this, but when you repeat things, people get it into their head. That's how I do it too. All right, so now let's talk about the raise. Because the target number and a raise goes hand in hand. They go hand in hand. They're skipping down the street singing Kumbaya about target numbers and raises. Okay? Remember, target number is 4. Alright? If you get a raise, then that means that you rolled 4 higher than the target number. Alright? So, remember, target number is 4. If you want to raise, the raise is 4 over the target number. So, it would be an 8. That's what a raise is. And you can raise multiple times. Asterisk down here. You can raise multiple times. And, second asterisk, your GM should reward you for each of these raises. A good GM will reward you for each one of these raises. All right? One more side note about raises, including attacks. No matter how many raises you get on an attack roll, you can only use it once. Okay? No matter how many raises only one counts. And when you get a raise on the attack roll, that means you get an additional D6 damage. That's why, you know, they only make you, they tell you you can only have one raise. That is additional D6 damage. So if you had this like crazy, you know, attack roll with your fighting, say my brawler had, you know, 4-8 exploding die for like a 37 roll, you know, the parry's 7. I can't take, you know, raise after raise after raise after raise and add a D6 for every raise. It doesn't work like that on attacks. Okay? So that's a raise. Alright, that's a raise. Target number 4. A raise is 4 over 8. It could be a 12, a 16, a 20. So your GM should reward you for every one of these raises over the base target number of 4. Golden Pants 293, thanks for the follow. Nightwing N94, thanks for the follow. Mini Thex, thanks for the follow also. So that's the raise terminology. All right. Now let's look at the next thing. We've talked about the target number of 4. So what happens if you need to do some kind of skill test that you're not trained in? So say that my brawler, you know, I already have the, you know, my brawler has the basically scared. No, actually, no, he doesn't have that. We'll just say that my brawler doesn't have healing. Say that another brawler that I was fighting got hurt, and I want to try to cure one of his wounds. I'm not skilled in medicine, so your DM or your GM has the right to tell you yes, you can do a roll, or yes you can do a roll, or no, you can't. Now for surgery or something, obviously my brawler would not be able to do brain surgery or open heart surgery if I needed it. That's obvious. So that would be a flat out no by the GM. Now I'm talking just basic curing of a wound. Maybe it would be first aid. Maybe I could do an unskilled check. Now, if you do an unskilled check, all right, and there are unskilled checks, and like I said, it's up to the game master if he or she will allow you to do an unskilled check. All right? Because we haven't touched on this yet. So, an unskilled check, no matter what it is, no matter what your ability or your trait score is a D4 minus 2. So you're screwed right off the bat. And I love it. I love it. It's not like other D20 games where anybody can say, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this notice roll, or I'm going to go ahead and do this spot check, or I'm going to go ahead and try remembering the lore of this, or I'm going to try to, I'm going to try to do this athletics check to push this door out of the way. And coming from somebody that doesn't even have any kind of skill. So that's what I like about the unskilled checks in Savage Worlds. So the D4, the D4, you got to roll a max. So you're minus 2. So if the target number, remember, the target number is 4 to break down that door. Or we'll say that there's even, the medicine check. We'll get back to the medicine check. Target number is a 4. I have to roll a D4 minus 2. So I basically need to ace the roll to get another roll to get at least a 2 or higher. So would I be successful? Let's get out my die and let's do a D4 minus 2. Wow, look at that. I rolled a 4. So that means that, my die exploded and I aced it. So I get to roll it again. I get to keep going until I don't max it out. So I rolled a 2. That's a 4 plus 2 is 6 minus the 2 because it's unskilled. I hit the target number. I actually was able to cure that guy. That's rare, Kate. That's rare to do. I got lucky there. Most of the time, you would fail. But I did get lucky with that unskilled check. But also, take your wild die into consideration too. And I believe your wild die goes up. Your wild die would be -2 also. So, I would have really screwed up on that one. So the 2, that would have just been out. So your wild die, that would have been -2 also. Awesome. So the D4 did it for me. But yes, you also, if you're a wild card, I did not add that in there, and I apologize, because I was just trying to make an example of it. But normally, you would, do the unskilled also with the other one. So this time, I would have been screwed. It would have been 4 minus 2 and 1 minus 2. So, yeah, that's it. So, yes, unskilled checks and your wild die would be a D6 minus 2. So your wild die also gets a negative modifier. All right? Don't forget that. So that's an unskilled check. There are opposed rolls in this game, in Savage Worlds. If two people are trying to, pull the weapon out of each other's hands, then they would just do like a strength trait roll versus strength trait roll, and the highest roller would get it. If they tie, then there's no tiebreaker, and that means that they're just fumbling with one another, and they would roll again until there's a distinctive winner. All right. There's cooperative rolls also, and cooperative rolls add a +1, and it's up to the dungeon master if he or she will allow someone to assist. And you basically would need to be skilled in that area. If it involves something intricate like surgery, then you would also have to be skilled in healing. And then you could add a +1 on. And you can add up to a maximum of +4 for cooperative rolls. So, we've already talked about the wild die. Everybody gets an additional D6. And take into consideration, the wild die also suffers during an unskilled check at -2. Alright? Piece of cake. Now let's talk about something else. Let's talk about bennies. I've mentioned that word a couple times. Alright? Bennies. Oh, my marker is like dying. I'm blaming this on Miss Scarlet. I don't know why, but I just am. Alright, bennies. Bennies are called benefits. Alright? Slang for benefits. And I'm going to read you out of the book what it says about bennies. Alright, every now and then, the dice may not work for you. That's why Savage Worlds gives you, the player, a little control over your hero's fate. Every player starts each game session with 3 bennies. 3. So, bennies, benefits. Asterisk. All players start with 3 each game. Alright. No, you do not get to save them. No, you do not get to carry them over. They do not add up to the next week. No, all players get 3 each game. There are certain optional rules that you can, carry them over with a successful check or something, but no. Core rules, everybody starts with 3 bennies each game. All right. Now, the Game Master can also give you more bennies for great role playing, overcoming major obstacles, or even entertaining everyone with an outlandish action, side-splitting comment, or memorable fact. Now, you can also get bennies for playing out your hindrances. So, seeing that, remember, my brawler that I made had a big mouth. If we were in some kind of bar, and if I started running my mouth of plans that we were fixing to do, or we were going to try to take over Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome or some bullshit like that, then the Game Master, in all reality, should give me a Benny for playing my hindrance out. Really should. And if your Game Master doesn't give you something, kind of remind him, kind of slip him a little piece of paper and say, hey, do you think I can get... Don't bladger your goddamn Game Master at the table. You should have gave me that Benny, brah. Handle it some other way. Pass a little note. Hey, do you think I can get a Benny next time for role-playing my edge or hindrance? Believe me, your Dungeon Master has a lot on his or her plate. So sometimes they may forget something. They're not perfect. You're not perfect. So don't bash your GM if they forget to give you a Benny. Ask them nice. Yeah. Piece of cake. So you can do things with bennies. All right. There are quite a few things that you can do with bennies. And we'll go over them. First off, well, you can do a lot, but I wouldn't do a lot, because especially if you're playing like an old school like fighting, I don't know if I would kind of really watch what I was using my bennies on. But all right. So you get bennies for good RP, like we said. All right. You'll get bennies for hindrances. And so forth. Gaining. Now, what do you use bennies on? Well, you can use bennies to reroll using bennies. First thing you can do is you can reroll any trait test, all right? We'll say trait or skill roll, all right? So, if you don't like your shooting roll, then re-roll it. Cash in a Benny and say, hey, Game Master, I didn't like that roll. I want to use a Benny to re-roll it. All right? That's cool. All right? So you can use a Benny doing that. You can also use a Benny, and you can do this as many times as you want. And I'm gonna, or until you run out of bennies. I mean, it's simple as that. You can keep going and going and going if you want to. Piece of cake. Keep till you run out. All right. You can also use bennies to get rid of the shaken condition. Shaken. Shaken is a pretty nasty condition. I'll explain what shaken is right now. Shaken is a condition in Savage Worlds that basically, if your parry is hit, you are automatically shaken. So if you have a parry of 7, if their attack roll against you is a 7 or 3 higher, or any higher, you're automatically shaken. Alright? When you're shaken, you can't take any actions when it's your turn. You're shaken. You can't do anything. You're just kind of froze there. Unless if you want to use a Benny, you can just cash in a Benny and get rid of the shaken status. Alright? Piece of cake. Piece of cake. So you can use a Benny to get rid of your shaken status. Easy. You can also use a Benny to get rid of a wound. A wound. Wounds are basically like your hit points, using terminology from a D20 game like 5e. Wounds are like your hit points. You basically get 4 wounds and then you're unconscious. On the 4th wound, I believe you go unconscious. On the 5th wound, you die. So if you take enough for 5 wounds worth of damage from raises, you can literally get one shot and die. Extremely unlikely to happen, but it's possible. Depending on how many raises the damage rolls get. Alright. So if you're fighting a dragon and the dragon rolls like 12d6 for damage, you better believe that there's going to be a bunch of 6s raising out of that 12d6. At least a couple. And then you'll just keep adding those onto the damage too until you stop rolling 6s. Crazy. Alright? So, you can use a Benny to get rid of a wound. A wound happens when you are raised. Alright, so if we'll go back to my parry being a 7. If the person rolls 11 damage, then that means, my wound toughness, I'm sorry. A damage versus toughness. And remember, your threshold for toughness, if it's a 7, anything under 7 you absorb it. Nothing happens. If they hit your threshold, which is 7, or 3 higher, or 4 higher, 10 higher, whatever, then that means that, you're not only going to be shaken, but if he rolls 4 higher, so if it would be an 11, if they rolled an 11 damage, they would hit your target number of 7 and hit a raise to the 11, then that means that you would get a wound also. If they rolled a 15, then that means that they got 2 raises and you'd take 2 wounds. And so forth, and so forth, and so forth. So now you would have to burn a Benny to get rid of a wound, because you would be shaken and wounded. So you can literally use only one Benny. So you can use a Benny to get rid of a wound. Target number's 4, and you would have to do a vigor check. Now, if you roll a 4, great, you get rid of the wound. If you had 2 wounds, and if you got a raise on that 4, so if you rolled the 4 and then got a raise of an 8 on your vigor roll, then you could have gotten rid of 4 wounds. And plus, whenever you get rid of your wound, it takes shaking off too. So you would be back to normal. So you can use a Benny to get rid of a wound. Pretty cool, right? So now, the only thing that you cannot use a Benny on, I think that's pretty much everything that you can use a Benny on. Rerolling, you cannot use a Benny. Don't. Alright? Asterisk here. In fact, I'm going to put the Benny don't. Benny don'ts. Alright? This is what you cannot use a Benny for. You cannot use a Benny to re-roll damage. Now, there are certain optional game rules that will allow you to do this, but for standard rules, you cannot use a Benny to re-roll damage unless you're putting special rules into play. And there is a whole section of special rules to play. And I believe it's called, if you're playing a game with the rules blood and guts involved, I believe that they will allow you to rules for blood and guts. I believe blood and guts allows you to re-roll damage rolls with bennies. But normally, you cannot re-roll damage. And you cannot re-roll anything on a chart. So if you're playing Call of Cthulhu and you're doing an insanity roll on the insanity chart, you cannot re-roll that roll. If you're doing any kind of chasing and you lose control of your car and you have to use the lose control chart, you cannot, you can't re-roll anything on there. You cannot use a Benny to re-roll on the injuries chart. So if you go unconscious and you go to the injuries table, you can't re-roll from that chart. And no re-rolls on charts. All right. So this is the terminology, everybody. This is basically just about all the terminology for Savage Worlds. Wild card, we mentioned, means that you're a player character. You get an additional D6. Ace, that's the max roll on a die. If you get a max roll, you roll it again and add it to the number. So if you roll an 8 on an 8-sided, re-roll it. If you roll a 6 again, your roll's a 14. That's acing. You can ace an infinite amount of times. You can ace an infinite amount of times. All the target numbers in the game are 4. A raise is 4 more over the target. And your Dungeon Master, you can raise multiple times. And for each raise, your Game Master, Dungeon Master, should give you rewards for each raise. They should. Whenever you're doing an attack roll, you can only get 1 raise, no matter how many raises you get. All right? So that's the kind of like a little stipulation for raises. Unskilled checks, remember, D4 minus 2. D4 minus 2. And don't think that you're going to squeak out your wild card die. Your wild die is a D6. Your wild card die is going to be a D6 minus 2 also. Bennies. You get 3 bennies at the start of every game. You can get more bennies for roleplay using your hindrances. You can, if you do something funny, if your DM just wants to give you one, they can give you one. He or she can give you one. You can spend bennies. You can spend bennies on re-rolling any kind of trait test or attack test or attack roll. You can use a Benny to get rid of the shaken condition. You can use a Benny to get rid of a wound, or called soak a wound, and I'll put soak over here in parentheses. You can soak a wound. That requires a vigor check with a target number of 4. Remember, target number 4, everything. I love it. It's easy. Easy. And you cannot, the Benny don'ts. Don't use bennies on reroll and damage unless you have like the blood and guts rule in effect in your game. And you can't reroll on any charts or tables or anything like that. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's it. So let me do one example of a. In fact, let me do this real quick. I'm gonna wipe it off. In fact, I'm gonna use this little rag that I have here really quick. And then I'm going to do a couple rolls for you. And then that's it. Alright. So, alright, let's do a trait roll. Alright, let's do a trait roll. Example. Alright. Trait roll. Say I'm going to do two trait rolls. I'm going to do a skilled and not skilled. First one, we're going to do just a basic. We're going to use strength break down a door. Strength trait. All right. Break down door. All right. No special skill needed. Nothing like that. It would just be a strength trait roll. All right. Remember, target number D4. I mean, shit. We'll say that there's a sort of like a. We'll say that there's like a construct or a robot behind the door that's kind of pinned up against it, and it is holding the door shut. So we need to do a strength roll, which my character would have a D8 for strength. Don't forget, we're going to use our wild die also. Alright, so I need to hit a target number 4. Alright, so I'm rolling my D8, my D6 for the wild die. That sucked. My strength, it sucked. But here, my wild die saved me. So I'll take the 5. Alright. I rolled a 5. That's successful. Alright. That means that I busted the door down. Alright, I got the door open. The robot's still in the way, blocking the door, but I basically shattered the door around it. Now, if I would have got a 9 as a raise, you know what I mean? Well, a raise would have been an 8. A raise would be an 8. Now, say if I rolled, we'll say that I rolled a 6, and then my second roll was a 2. That would have gave me the 8. So then that means I would have did the raise instead of the 4. Which, if I would have got a raise, then the DM could have said, all right, not only did you break the door down, but you knocked the robot back that was holding the door. You knocked the robot back, say, 4 squares. So that there would be nothing else blocking the door. Everybody could get in easily. All right, and you would knock the robot down. So that's pretty much how it would go for a standard trait roll. Now, let's go with something like let's go with an attack roll, shall we? All right. Remember, like I said, it is your attack skill versus target's parry. All right. There are 3 attacking skills. There is fighting, all melee. All right. There is shooting, all ranged, as in guns, bows, slings, whatever. All right. And then there's throwing. Throwing's probably the least used. Throwing is like Chinese stars. A dwarf throwing his axes or hammers. Throwing daggers. Darts, etc. Alright? That's it. Those are the 3 skill rolls that you would attack versus parry. Alright, so say let's say that I am being attacked. All right? Say that I am being attacked. My parry, we'll say that my parry is a 7, which is what it was when I made that character. We'll say my toughness is the 5. All right? So, we'll say that the robot has gotten up, and the next round has basically something like a little R2-D2 door pops out, and a little laser pops out and tries to shoot me. All right, we'll say that this robot is actually pretty badass. All right, and we'll say that the robot has a D10 for shooting, and we'll say that this is the. We'll say that this robot. We'll say that the robot's a wild die. Well, we'll say that the robot's a wild card. So we're going to add in the wild die. Because this is the end-all be-all. This is the controller of the Matrix. We'll say that this is the controller of the space Matrix, this robot here. So he's an important figure in the game, so he's going to be a wild card. So we'll say that he shoots me. He gets up and shoots me, and I have a parry of 7. So I'm going to roll a D10, and I'm going to roll a D6 for my wild die. All right, so we'll call him... What will we call this? Hey, bud. What are we going to call this little robot? Think quick, son. Think of a name. Let's call him M1. We'll just call him M1 Afro. All right, that's a horrible name, but hey, it's a game, right? So the M1 Afro, controller of the Matrix, the space Matrix, attacks. All right. My wild die was garbage, so we'll throw that out. And I rolled a 9. All right. He hit me. He hit me. All right. He hit me. He attacked my parry. He rolled a 9. My parry's 7. He hit me. He didn't get a raise on me. If he would have rolled an 11, then he would have got a raise on me and did extra damage, an extra 1d6. So we'll say that his laser beam does a total of 3d6 damage. All right, and I only got a toughness of 5. So old M1 Afro is gonna probably kick my ass. All right, M1 Afro. Where did that name come up, son?
I don't know.
That's oh my gosh. All right, so 3d6. I took 4, 2, God bless it, and 6. So I took a total of 12 damage. Obviously, I got hit pretty hard. So I got hit for the base of 5, so I'm shaken. So a raise is a 9. All right, a raise is 9. And I had a 12. So I almost got 2 wounds, but I suffered shaken and 1 wound. If old M1 Afro here would have rolled 1 more, then I would have suffered shaken and 2 wounds. See what I mean? It's vicious. Totally vicious. Oh, I aced. So I do roll 1 more. I just looked at it. I aced. So 12, that would be a 17. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm explaining. I'm totally forgetting. So I did ace. So that 12 versus 5 would be 17. So not only I got shaken, I got a raise. Raise 2 would be 13. Oh my God. And raise 3 would be 17. I took 17 damage. So not only was I shaken, I just took 3 freaking wounds. I'm in pretty bad shape. I just got blasted by M1 Afro here. Alright? I just got blasted. So, of course, I'm gonna use a Benny right now. I'm gonna use a Benny. I gotta use a Benny. So you can use 1 Benny to get rid of wounds around. So we'll say that my vigor is an 8. Alright? We'll say that my vigor is an 8 and my wild die. So, dude, I'm shaken with 3 wounds right now. I'm like staggering around, so I'm trying to recover this. I'm trying to, because when you go to 4 wounds, that means you're incapacitated on your 4th wound. And then 5 is pretty much his death. So let me go ahead and re-roll this, even though I wouldn't like to. I threw my dice off the damn table. Alright, so not an ace. This is an ace, so I rolled an 8. So I'm going to go ahead and roll again, which would be an 11. So my vigor check was great. Alright, I took 3 wounds. I got the target of 4, and I got a raise. So I took 2 wounds off. So that attack, literally, I'll take this off, take wound number 2 off. I took 1 wound and shaken. So I'm still in bad shape. So the next round, I can spend another Benny. Pretty crazy. So that's how Savage Worlds works. That's an attack. And sorry, I forgot on the 17 total. Now let's check incapacitated really quick, because I believe it's 4 and then dead on 5. So I would feel better if I did that. So page 86 of my book. Yep, just give me just a second. Okay, here it is. Wild cards are incapacitated if they suffer more than 3 wounds, or cumulatively all at once. So, yeah, I was close to being incapacitated, but wild cards are incapacitated if they suffer more than 3 wounds, or cumulatively, yeah. So when a wild card becomes incapacitated, you make the immediate vigor roll, which is a total of 1 or less. If I rolled a 1, then that means that I would die. Failure is a roll on the injury table, which is a D12, 2d6. And then a raise on the injury roll. Well, success would be injury roll still, and the injury goes away when it's healed. Failure would be the injury is permanent, and then on a raise, the injury goes away within 24 hours. So yeah, wow, crazy. So one last thing that you need to remember about wounds, all right, and when you're shaken. When you have wounds, I'm kind of glad this kind of happened. So when you have wounds and it's your turn, each wound is -1 to any rolls. All right, pretty crazy. So that's pretty much an attack roll and a trait roll. I hope I got everything right. I've only been playing Savage Worlds for literally probably about 3 weeks. But I believe everything is okay. So if you guys think I missed anything, speak up now. Let me read chats. Yeah, Jub, I did ace. D-block. M1 Afro. Where the hell did I come up with that name? Let's see, Jub, you take a minus to your roll. Yes, exactly. Minus 1 for every wound. So if I have 2 wounds, it's -2. X-Mech X. Savage Worlds is anything. Savage Worlds is fantasy, it's space, it's superheroes, it's Van Helsing, it's World War II, World War I, it's whatever you want. Yes, it's sort of like GURPS, but a lot easier to play. GURPS has kind of bloated itself over the years. Since when I first played GURPS back in the 80s, GURPS has totally bloated itself. GURPS is the Pathfinder of generic role-playing systems. So I think that covers everything about the checks and the terminology. Of course, there's more rules than this in the game, but I believe I covered everything. All right, I believe I covered everything. All right, cool. So there we go.